The value we place on our money and the correlation with our emotions is joined at the hip, according to Rutgers University. Values can affect everything from career decisions, how we spend our time, and how our money is handled. A value is a force which is innately in people, which helps them to direct their lives. Each individual person places a unique value and worth on items such as family, their career, finances, and their health, overall quality of life, their job skills, and finally, love, comfort, and their friendship skills. With over 17 years of owning and operating a financial planning firm, Chad Hufford has come to realize something very quickly over the course of time. Managing his clients' mindset, behavior, and habits is a large part of the success or failure of his job. His firm has experience managing over $500 million in assets, and Hufford's and his staff's ability to meet people where they are and help them to elevate their level of personal and professional thinking has gone a long way in establishing a long track record of sustainable success. Leveraging a background in biochemistry and more than 2 decades of experience in high performance athletic training and sports psychology, Hubbard's been able to combine this experience and expertise helping people from a coaching perspective by helping people create a better relationship with their future and creating the right mind frame for them to successfully invest in both their finances and personal life in general. And Hufford joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to talk to you all about your career and finance and everything in between, my friend. Great to see you this afternoon, and thank you so very much for being here.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so Chad, I know that you've been in sort of the financial sector for most of your adult life, but you also have a background in athletics and sports psychology, my friend. You seem to be a fascinating person, so I'm wondering if you can tell me what makes you so fabulous and fascinating, my friend.
Well, I don't know about fabulous and fascinating, but I do have a very unique pathway into finance. And my degree is actually, Kevin, it's in biochemistry. My pathway, I thought, was going to be in medicine. And when I was in my senior year, getting my biochemistry degree, I met the woman who's now my wife. We have 6 kids together. And my plan in life was to be either an endocrinologist or a hotshot surgeon. And after getting to know my wife, I realized she wanted a family. She wanted a husband. She wanted somebody to raise kids with, and not a hotshot surgeon. So I had to take a different route and kind of, well, not take a different route, but rethink where I was going to go. So I've accumulated knowledge and experience in a lot of other areas and have been able to blend that into what I do financially. And Kevin, has been a blessing because I think if I were to jump right into the financial world, I would not have been as prepared. I probably would have been doing things like a lot of other financial professionals. And you can look at the world today and realize that if financial professionals were doing what they needed to do to help people create a life of abundance and financial independence, people wouldn't be struggling as much as they are. So I think having a different approach has been really, really good for me, having a different background, different experiences, and being able to take those other elements, the biochemistry, the performance psychology, the coaching, the athletics, and blend that into finances has been very vital. And like I said, it's just been a blessing. I could not have written the story this way, but it's been wonderful being a part of it as it's played out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a chapter of that story is helping people live a more abundant life and making sure that they don't run out of money by the time they retire, helping them live a more purposeful life. So I'm wondering if you can tell me all about it.
Well, it's when I first started, I thought my big contribution to the world would be making sure that people don't run out of money in retirement. That's a big worry for people is that they'll retire and if they live too long, they might outlive their money, outlive their income. But Kevin, as I've worked in this industry now for almost 2 decades, I've realized that even more than making sure people don't run out of money is making sure they don't run out of purpose. And living an abundant life is so much more than just finances. It's about faith. It's about your family. It's about your health. If you don't have those other pillars in your life, the money can be really empty. So yes, it's important. We want financial security. We want financial independence. We want to make sure that people aren't waking up every day worried about their bills and how to get their paycheck to cover all their expenses. But that isn't the only issue. So if we solve that problem, we can help solve some of those other issues as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chad, I'm fascinated to ask you about when you look at the word inclusion and making sure that people are financially included and societally included. How do you view the concept of inclusion and acceptance?
I think I think that narrative can I think we need to be careful with that because some people are waiting for permission, Kevin. They're waiting for somebody to invite them into something. And in doing so, a lot of folks are on the sidelines of their own life. And this life is not fair. This people some people get the short end of the stick. I hope this isn't too personal, but my wife grew up homeless for part of her childhood. She remembers having Christmas in homeless shelters. No kid should have to go through that. But a lot of people are stuck in what the world has told them about themselves. And I just want people to have a sense of agency that regardless of the hurdles you've had to overcome, regardless of the walls and barricades people have put in front of you, that you still have agency over your life. I believe every person is the biggest determining factor, the biggest variable in the trajectory and the outcome of their own life. It's what you do, not what happens to you, that makes the biggest difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a follow up to that, Chad, I'm curious, how do you define prosperity and overcoming adversity?
I think prosperity means different things to different people. And this is why it's so important for people to know what their priority in life really is, what is most important to them, because too often people are chasing somebody else's version of prosperity. Kevin, there's things that are probably really valuable to you that wouldn't be super valuable to me. There's things that might make my heart come alive and my spirit soar that don't really connect with you. And that's okay. But with today's world, I think we're always wired a little bit to kind of keep up with the Joneses. I think that's very deep in our DNA. But with social media and these iPhones, things like that, the pressure is even more now to live the life that you think is important to somebody else rather than what's important to you. So I think prosperity is being able to to wake up every morning with a feeling of hope, with intentionality, with a purpose, a meaningful purpose to impact the lives of people around you. You feel like you have something to give more than there is for you to get. You can give away more than you're looking to receive, and also a healthy view of optimism. And I think this ties in very much with this idea of overcoming adversity. So I think there's some people out there, Kevin, that are hopeless. But I also think some people have a very unhealthy view of optimism. And there's a huge difference between somebody believing that things will always get better and somebody believing that things will be better in the future. Life isn't like that. It's more like a mountain range. And here in Alaska, we have a lot of examples, but life is jagged. Sometimes you have to cross valleys before you can keep climbing. Now, there's a peak at the end of this. There is something better, but healthy optimism is saying, I believe things will be better in the future, but there's going to be a lot of trials and tribulations in between. And if people can view it that way, it's easier to overcome adversity. Because if we're hopeless and we experience adversity, it's easy to just give up because we just think it's never going to get better. It becomes learned helplessness. If we believe things will always get better and we experience adversity, we think, I must be doing something wrong. I'm on the wrong path. Something isn't working. But if we can have a healthy view of optimism, realizing there's a destination out there, there's a peak, there's a mountaintop, there's a summit that I'm working towards, but I'm going to have to cross a lot of valleys to get there. It's easier to walk through those valleys. It's easier to weather those storms because there's a purpose behind it. There's meaning behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Chad, I'm going to tell you a quick story and how I really value the concept of diversity of thought. Chad, at the age of 9, my friend, I found out that I would not be able to walk for the duration of my life without assistance because, Chad, I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia, cerebral palsy. Simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally. But I always tell myself, and people always tell me that, why am I so positive, or why do I have such an optimistic view of life? And I told them that we all have sort of. I look at life as a deck of playing cards, Chad, and we all have a deck of cards that we're given in life, and it's incumbent upon all of us to sort of stack the deck of cards into our favor. So I tell people that my portrait of success is a little bit different than other people. So I'm interested to get your perspective on the importance of sort of having a diversity of thought when we look to solve challenges and solve problems and create solutions. So how important do you think diversity of thought really is when we look at attacking life, my friend?
Well, it's a great question. It's a big question. And I think it ties in a little bit to, what is your definition of prosperity? In a sense, you're asking, what does a win look like? And I think in life, we get curveballs, things are thrown at us, and it might disrupt what we were planning to do. I mean, just like my turn was different than yours, but my ears were pinned back. I was going after a career in medicine, full bore. I had professors at medical schools writing me recommendations. I had a beautiful path, I thought, paved in front of me, and I felt God calling me somewhere else. But I think it's being open to what is out there and how to impact other people and how to make a ripple effect in the world and not have our view of success so narrow. For some people, it might be money. They might have been raised with, if you make a ton of money, you're successful. Or if you have a ton of influence, you're successful. Or if you get a great education, you have a bunch of letters after your name, you're successful. And I think it's being open, the idea of diversity of thought, of thinking about other ways or other manifestations of success that might not be somebody else's definition, but they connect here. It's what makes my heart come alive. It's what makes life fulfilling for me. It makes me want to chase something and pursue something. And I think it goes down to that openness. And Kevin, I think it's something that we lose if we're not careful. Because if you look at a little kid, right, they're open to everything. They're open to, they can go from one idea to the next. They're creative. They can turn a stick into a magic wand, into a gun, into an oar, a paddle, an anything, a horse, right? And their mind is so plastic, and they're open to all these potential outcomes and ideas and pathways. And as we get older, I think a lot of that creativity gets ironed out of us, gets educated out of us, and gets choked out by practicality. And sometimes we have such a narrow viewpoint of what success or what meaning or what impact should look like because of the influence of other people and even the stories that we tell ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, Chad, I'm curious to ask you, what do you think it means to live life with intention? And how do you think our relationship to finances are sort of interconnected to living life with intention?
So one of the things I tell people is there's a world of difference between somebody who is investing towards a specific objective and somebody who's merely collecting investments. Now, a lot of folks in our society, Kevin, they're not even collecting investments. They're consuming everything they earn. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They're saddled with debt. And there's a lot of folks in that boat that aren't even able or aren't willing to save for the future. But of the subset of people that are willing to save, a lot of them aren't truly investing. They're collecting investments. They're putting money away. That part is intentional, but where it's going is very arbitrary. So it's important for somebody who's saving for the future, saving for retirement, to have a clear picture of what that looks like. When is enough enough? It's like building a house, Kevin, where you have this blueprint that guides your saving and investing decisions going forward based on a finished product, what you want that financial house to look like, what do you want it to do for you. And then you reverse engineer it. You say, here's what financial independence needs to look like for me. And this is a big part of what we do, is helping people figure out what they will need to be financially independent, and then reverse engineering it. So they have a pathway, they have a blueprint to follow that connects where they want to be in the future with what they're doing today. And I think something like that is so important, not just in finances, but in life in general. Too many people are waking up every day on accident. They're living day to day. There's even a song, "Living for the Weekend," right? Where they're not working towards anything long term or really meaningful. It's getting through the day, it's getting through the week, getting to that next vacation, but their life isn't building towards anything that's really meaning and purposeful. And without that intention, without those objectives, it's really easy to feel aimless and then eventually hopeless, and gets people to that learned helplessness that we talked about earlier. So it's having an objective, having a strategy for how you live life. Now, you can still keep an open mind, right? Like you can take your phone and put in a destination, and there might be an accident, there might be construction, and the app reroutes you. So there'll be times in life where you will have a destination, you will have a course bringing you to that long-term destination, and something happens. You need to take a detour. You get rerouted, your destination changes. That's okay. That's where we need to have that open mind, that diversity of thinking that you talked about earlier. But there still should be a course, and it gets recalibrated as our objectives evolve. That's okay. But we always want to be working towards something, so we're not reacting to everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chad, I'm fascinated to ask you, as a society and as a people at large, do you think we've gotten smarter in the way that we value and manage money?
It's an interesting question, and I might have to try to answer it a couple different ways. Rein me back in if you need to, but we're in an information age. Like, we are flooded with information constantly. But one thing that people don't always necessarily realize is, number one, not all data is information. Not all information is knowledge. Not all knowledge is wisdom. And because we're flooded with so much data and information, that a lot of times that information is actually misinformation. It might be distracting us more than it's helping us. So that's where wisdom and discernment is really important in knowing what is good information, what is important information, and what information helps me. So number one, if I don't know where I'm going, it's really hard for me to know which directions to follow. So that's where having that long-term objective is important. But also having the wisdom and discernment to work through all the information, all the ideas that are out there, because there's a lot of garbage out there too. The other part of it is this goes beyond knowledge. Creating a better life, becoming financially independent, becoming physically fit, having healthy relationships, living a life of abundance is more than just a knowledge issue. We can give people knowledge, and knowledge is important, but it comes down to a mindset. So I use this example all the time because our office is right next to a McDonald's, and people are in and out of there all day long. In the mornings, there's a line wrapped around the street. People are starting their day with a bad health decision, knowing full well what they're doing to themselves. Maybe not the full extent of it, but they know it's not a great decision. They know an Egg McMuffin is probably not the best way to start their day, but they do it not because of a knowledge issue. It's because of an intentionality issue. They're willing to sacrifice the future for the present. So while I believe that there's more knowledge about finances out there than ever before, I also believe there's more misinformation than there was ever before. And I think people's mindsets are probably less willing to sacrifice, less willing to do hard things, and more willing to choose the easy wrong rather than follow the hard right.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chad is a boutique financial firm that you run. I know that you've managed over $500 million in assets, my friend. And I know that creating relationships from a personal perspective is big into sort of managing expectations and the success of your clients. I'm wondering if you can tell me about the financial firm that you own and what sets you apart, my friend.
Well, what you said about managing expectations is really important. So it's a big part of what we do. And I'll just, in a nutshell, it's kind of the three stages we help people work through. Number one, identifying what those long-term goals are. Like, what do they actually want to accomplish? And then it's helping people create a plan or a pathway to get them there. So find out where they want to be, really clear and honest about where they are right now, and find a plan and a pathway that connects those two places. And then the third piece is creating the right strategy and keeping them on task, keeping them executing the strategy, keeping them executing the plan. And that might be the biggest piece of all, because a great plan that isn't followed isn't a great plan. So think about, like, a great diet or a great business plan. You can have a great business plan that remains on a shelf somewhere. There's nothing wrong with the plan, but if you don't execute it, it's not going to change your business. It's not going to change your life. It's not going to make an impact in how you serve people and make money. So it's getting people to execute that plan. That's the coaching part. And that's where we bring a lot of performance psychology into it, because it's taking what people know and getting them to do the hard things that they might not want to do to accomplish those long-term goals. So it's getting their knowledge actually into action. And for human beings, as you know, Kevin, sometimes that's the hardest thing, is taking what's up here in their head, getting it into their heart, and get them moving forward with it. And managing expectations is a huge part of it. Investing requires a lot of sacrifice, not just personal sacrifice in the sense that, yeah, you might have to give up buying something you want now so you can save for the future. But just look at the world right now. Look at our economy and all the fear and the doom and gloom that's out there in the news. It's really hard to put money away when everybody on the news is telling you how scary the world is. And for a lot of folks, with the way the markets have been over the past year and a half, some of you guys, your 401k looks more like a 301k right now, and that's okay. but it's hard. It's hard to put money towards something and see that temporary decline. And what we remind people is if you're invested properly and you are diversified across some of the greatest companies of the world, the declines are temporary, the advance is permanent. But terms, it's a necessary part of life. Adversity is part of investing, just like it is in many areas of life. And it's managing those expectations, because if people expect their portfolios to go up and up and up every year, they're going to be disappointed very, very early on.
It's all about having a temporary uh, tolerance for growth and really learning the value of patience, isn't it?
It is. And it's being able to endure discomfort in the moment for security in the long run. You know, I've watched some of what you've done and some of what you've accomplished, and even just some of the physical therapy. It's painful. I can see it on your face. You go through a tremendous amount of pain, and it's not just physical. There's a lot of mental discomfort that you put yourself through to continue to move forward. And that's in a literal sense, and it's also in a metaphorical sense. And too many people in this world have forgotten that we need to be willing to embrace pain and discomfort. And I was just talking to another group here recently, and there's a sense in our world today, we have mistakenly connected discomfort with harm. If I am uncomfortable, then I'm being harmed. And if I am comfortable, then I'm safe. And those things a lot of times are not true. And in fact, the best decisions in life in the long term are often uncomfortable in the short term. It's going out for a run early in the morning. It's eating your vegetables. It's having that hard conversation with a spouse or a loved one. It's paying off debt rather than buying a new car. It's saving for retirement. It's taking those hard early morning classes so you can get that degree that opens up more opportunities. The best things in life, especially for your future self, are often a little bit painful and sometimes very uncomfortable in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Chad, I'm going to share a personal story with you, just one more personal story with you, buddy. So my dad worked for General Motors from 1977 until he retired in 2021. And one of the reasons that he decided to retire was because he couldn't financially gain any more money by working any longer. So I'm curious, when you advise people on the right time to retire and making sure that they have enough money in the bank to sustain themselves for the duration of your life, I'm curious, what do you tell them when they come to you and say, I want to financially plan for the rest of my life?
Well, this goes back to what we talked about earlier about having a strategic objective. If somebody knows how much income it would take on a monthly basis to sustain them, just for example, if I had X amount of dollars showing up in my bank account every month, I could sustain my current lifestyle. If somebody has that number and they have an idea of when they would like financial independence, let's say it's 10 years. It doesn't take that long. In 10 to 15 minutes, we can come up with a pretty strategic target for how much they will need to accumulate to create enduring financial independence. When I say enduring financial independence, I mean two things. One is the duration of income. If you look at a couple who's retiring at 60, they could very easily have 3 decades of expenses to pay for. So we look at duration of income. We want that money to last at least the remainder of both their lifetimes, right? So there's only 2 financial outcomes in retirement. Either you outlive your money or your money outlives you. We want it to be the second one. So we plan for duration of income. We want their money, their investments, their financial house to outlive them. The other part is direction of income. So it's no surprise to anybody that we live in a rising cost world. That's been front of mind. It's been on the news a lot the last couple of years, this dirty word called inflation. Well, inflation is not new. It's been around for a long time. In fact, A lot of the folks retiring today, if they look back to when the day they were born, it probably costs roughly $1,000 today to buy what $100 did 65 years ago when they were born. So we want duration and direction of income to both be part of that goal setting. And then we have a very specific target for what people need, and we call it a work optional lifestyle. We've kind of backed away from this idea of retirement because a lot of the folks that we work with, Kevin, they're the worst types of people to be retired and sit around and do nothing. And not to say there's anything wrong with playing golf every day and things like that, but I believe people need meaningful pursuit even in retirement. We don't want people just retiring from something. We want them retiring to something. So we want this idea of a work optional lifestyle where some people continue working beyond the date of their financial independence. We want them to have a specific target where they know when I hit this milestone, I am financially independent. I have a work optional lifestyle. Whether I retire at that moment or not, I no longer need my paycheck to maintain my lifestyle. And part of that process, Kevin, is helping folks come up with something to retire to. Now, there's a lot of people that have a very clear vision of what they want their life to look like if they don't have to go to work every day. But not everybody does, especially people in really stressful careers. They might be so focused on what they're retiring from that they neglect to plan what they're retiring to. So we try to help with that as well, making sure that, again, people don't just have money to last the remainder of their lifetimes, but they have purpose to last the remainder of their lifetime as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Chad, I have a personal belief that, we're all given sort of our passion and purpose and potential in life. But I firmly believe that positive things can only happen to you if you take tangible action for your own progression in life. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on that notion of always taking positive action steps towards prosperity.
Well, that's what is a big part of what we do. Is a great comment there, because let's say we walk through this exercise. You come up with a number. You need X amount of dollars every month from your investments to be able to give up your paycheck, right? And we throw out a number. So your target, we go through the exercise. We don't have time to go through that here today, but like I said, it takes 10 to 15 minutes. Your audience can even reach out. We can walk through it with them. Let's say your number is $2.5 million. You need to accumulate $2.5 million. That's your retirement number. Everybody has one. Very few people know what it is. Well, if I told you that, Kevin, you need $2.5 million to be financially independent, that might be really overwhelming. That might be very intimidating. And it's really easy to push that off on future Kevin. Like future Kevin can figure out how to get there. Current Kevin is going to live in the moment. So what we do is we create a blueprint that takes that long-term goal and breaks it down into what they can do today to work towards that. And sometimes is looking at what is the smallest step I can take towards that long-term goal, towards that vision. So having a blueprint that breaks down this big, huge goal into monthly targets, it does two things. Number one, it brings the future into today. It helps connect current actions to a future long-term objective. But what it also does is it reduces some of the intimidation. It reduces that sense that I've got to get it all figured out right now. And so if we go through this exercise, maybe you realize, okay, you need $2.5 million by the time you retire. That means you need to save an extra $500, maybe $1,000 a month today. Again, I'm making these numbers up, but you can wrap your head around that concept. It might be difficult to find an extra $500 a month to save, but that's much more tangible than saying you've got to have $2.5 million when you're 65 years old or whatever the number ends up being, right? So if I say you need $2.5 million at 65, what that sounds like, Kevin, is 65-year-old Kevin. That's his problem. If I say you need to save an extra $500 a month, that's a problem for you. It's something that needs to be solved in the moment. And every day of the month matters because you're trying to figure out how to carve out $500 to pay your future self. And in doing so, in this exercise, of course, I'm simplifying it, but now you've taken that long-term goal, you broke it down into bite-sized chunks, and you've given meaning into today. So it's harder to kick the can down the road. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it certainly does, and it leads into my next question. Considering the work that you do, Chad, if I gave you the challenge of writing your life mission or what you hope or accomplished in your life in one sentence, my friend, what do you think that sentence would read, and how do you want sort of your professional sort of stamp on the world to be left, my friend?
I would say it's helping people overcome a sense of scarcity and feelings of helplessness to help people experience and build a life of abundance.
Yeah, fair enough. And tell me, I know that family is big for you, my friend. So tell me, why is family at the root of everything that you do?
Well, I grew up in a large family. There were five of us kids, and as we were talking about earlier, I was homeschooled, very tight knit. In fact, two of my siblings work with me. Um, we, by God's grace, our family is still very close. All of us siblings are very good friends, and my wife came from a very different background. So, broken family, just I already kind of touched on a little bit of that, but some very, very difficult circumstances and a strong family. I think even beyond my personal experience, I think a strong family is the foundation of a strong nation. And I think our nation needs stronger families. This is maybe a whole other conversation, but um, I just think a strong family is fundamental to living a life of abundance. And even if your biological family isn't going to give that to you, I think people need to surround themselves with a community that can still have some of that effect. I believe as human beings, we are designed to be interdependent. And I'm saying that as a hardcore introvert. So don't get me wrong, I'm not one of these people that wants to mingle and talk to everybody and network and go into a room and I'm everybody's best friend. I am not. I'm the guy in the corner that is very uncomfortable and being drained by all the conversations. But I believe we were still meant for that human connection. So family is vital. And I've seen the impact that it makes. Strong family, not just within the family, but on other families. I think our world is looking to strong families. They want that. And it's one of the most valuable things in my life. And I've built my business around that to make sure that I'm running my business and my business is not running me. And I never want to sacrifice my family, my kids, my wife, my relationships for a more successful business, for more money. And again, by God's grace, I found a way to have excellence in both areas. Not that I've got it all figured out. I've got a lot to learn in both areas, but I've been able to build a successful business without sacrificing my family. And I'm very proud of it. I'm very grateful for it. And I was raised just with parents that loved me, that cared for me. Not everybody has that. And I realize how blessed I am to have that. And I also feel that to whom much is given, much is expected. So because I had something that not a lot of folks have, I've got a lot that I need to be giving out there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about paying it forward, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. And, Chad, if I gave you a magic wand and I told you that you could wave a magic wand and fix sort of a societal issue that's sort of not bringing people closer together, I'm curious, where would you spend that capital in trying to bring people closer together? Because I'll tell you, Chad, I started this podcast because I look at the world and I said to myself, there has to be more that brings us together instead of bringing us apart. And I'm big on creating what I call bridges of unity. So when you look at the world today, what's the one societal issue you hope that you can bring people closer together on in any aspect of life?
I wish that as a society, Kevin, that we focus more on what unites us, more on what our commonalities are, more on where we are alike than on what differentiates us and what divides us. I think uh, human nature and in the media have caused us to look at everything that separates us, everything that causes us to be different, rather than all the things that make us the same, and the things that could unite us. And it's been a problem on this planet for a very long time. It's not new. But that's what I would wish for and hope for, that we could build community around commonality and focus on the threads, the ties that bind us together, that make us unite, rather than the few things that divide us. And to your point, we've drawn lines like all over the place on race and faith and whether you're vaccinated or not, or whether you wore a mask, or like we've found all these different ways to slice society up and divide each other. And I think that's so detrimental and destructive.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Chad, I'll get you out of here on a two-part question, my friend. As you shared with me, you have a large family. I think you said you're the father of six, and your wife wanted a big family. So I'm curious, as we bring our conversation to an end, what's your greatest hope for your personal and professional legacy, and how do you want that to be defined?
You're right. So I have six kids. My oldest just turned 15 on Monday, and she is almost eyeball to eyeball with me. I might have a half an inch of height on her. By the end of the year, I'll be looking up at my baby girl, which weirds me out. I've got 15 down to 3, so we still have a toddler at the house. So I've got a girl that's almost 6 feet tall, and I've got a little toddler still doing toddler stuff. Um, my biggest goal for my family is, sorry,
No, take your time.
biggest goal for my family, they would all come to know and love Jesus, and that they would see how much they've been given and wake up every morning with a desire to serve others and honor God. That's what I want for my family. And professionally, I want my business to I want Veritas to endure much longer than me, and I want it to impact lives, and I want it to give people hope. I want it to help people overcome feelings of scarcity and helplessness. And I want it to not just help people become better investors, but to become better humans, to live better lives. And I believe we're doing that. And I'm looking forward to doing that even more impactful way on a larger scale, and broadening the footprint that we have. And I appreciate you having me on and even allowing me to have this conversation. I hope it was encouraging. I hope that your audience was encouraged, uplifted, maybe even a little inspired. So that's how I'd answer those two questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chad, just out of personal curiosity, before I let you go and ask you how people can get connected with you, what's the best part about living in Alaska, and what do you think are hidden gems that people might not necessarily know about that region of the country?
Okay, so I'll give your audience a piece of trivia, and you guys, your audience, I don't recommend hanging out at bars, but you can win a lot of money at bars with this piece of trivia. So, Kevin, if I were to ask you, what is the most western state and what is the most eastern state? A lot of people will give an answer for most western state. Some people forget about Alaska. They forget we're part of the United States. They're thinking like Washington and Oregon and things like that. So if you look at a globe, obviously Alaska is the most western state. But what a lot of people don't realize, it is also the most eastern state. Now, that sounds impossible, but Alaska is so vast and so huge. And just to put this in context, Alaska has less than one person per square mile. Alaska has one per capita, less than one person per square mile. That's how big it is. And it stretches so far that the western tip of Alaska is actually in the eastern hemisphere. So Alaska is both the westernmost and easternmost state. So there's a little trivia on that. What is the best part about living in Alaska? It is rugged and untouched wilderness. So we live kind of on the edge of Anchorage. Anchorage is by far the biggest, kind of most civilized. Civilized might not be the right word, but it's the largest town in Anchorage by far. About 300,000 people. So still relatively small when you think of most states' big cities. But we've got a little bit of everything here. The movie theaters and the restaurants and most of what you would expect, the Costco, that type of thing. But right outside my door is wilderness, and it is raw. It is unforgiving. We have bears and moose that come through our yard, lynx. And it's amazing to see that. It's amazing to see a world that's untouched and unexplored. And I am blessed that's right outside my door. And I wake up every morning, and we built a house kind of on the side of a mountain. And not that the audience thinks everybody lives like that. This is a place that I grew up. I wanted this. So there's a town, it's normal. We kind of live outside of that, but it literally is on the side of a mountain. We just overlook the inlet. And it's amazing. It's absolutely breathtaking, Kevin. And I pinch myself that I get to live there every day and to see just the awesomeness of nature surrounding us every day. That will never get old to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And quickly, Chad, tell me, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, our website is veritasalaska.com. And we're on Facebook and Instagram and things like that. My biggest social presence is actually on LinkedIn. You can just look on LinkedIn for Chad Hufford Veritas or Chad Hufford Alaska. I'll come right up. But if they have questions, or if people want to find out what their retirement number is, get more intentional about planning for their future, you can send an email to ask at veritasalaska.com, and we'll get in touch and help you guys get answers to your questions.
Oh, well, fantastic. Well, I have to tell you, in a little bit of time, I had to sit down and engage in a conversation with you, Chad. I became smarter for having this conversation. So I want to thank you for bringing your energy and enthusiasm and knowledge and expertise to our conversation, and for joining me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Well, the pleasure has been mine. I appreciate it, and been inspired by you, Kevin, and what you've done and what you've overcome. And it's been an honor here to be here with you and with your audience. So thank you.